am Abby. I am the Executive Director of Life Science Tennessee and also the Life Science Tennessee Foundation. And the Life Science Tennessee Foundation is the organization that is focused on workforce, economic development, mentoring across the state of Tennessee for life science companies and employees to continue to grow the life sciences across our state. And Life Science Tennessee itself is actually an industry association which advocates for the expansion of life sciences, primarily to our Tennessee state legislature and our congressional delegation. And I have the pleasure of being the executive director of both organizations that have a strategic alignment, two separate boards, but have a strategic alignment. And before we get started with the program, and I apologize for the delay, I think everyone probably saw in the chat, for those of you that are not here live, we had a fire alarm go off in the building right about right at the start, right at 3:30. So anyway, so we're getting delayed a little bit, but our speaker says that he can cut some of the program a little bit short, so we'll be sure to get out of here on time. But I did want to just alert a couple of different events that are happening for Life Science Tennessee. We have an ecosystem building breakfast that we have been doing in Nashville, Tennessee. That's coming up on May 15th. And also, if you'll look down on August 21st, we are doing a large booth presence. We were just talking about that a little bit ago in this room at the Bio International Conference, which is going to be in Boston, Massachusetts. So if ever anyone has thought about attending Bio, you'll have a home base sponsored by Life Science Tennessee and our members. LSTCon will be on November 18th. And every second Tuesday, we will have the Life Science Venture Program Education Series, just like what we're doing now, and followed up by a networking event called Beer and Biotech, which we're going to be doing at Wiseacre just after this program. So we encourage you to make sure to check out Life Science Tennessee's website. All of this information will be on there, and we encourage you to get engaged and get involved. Now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Dudek, who is, Olaf. Now I'll turn it over to Olaf Schultz, who is the director of the 0 to 5-10 program at Epicenter. And thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thanks everyone. Thanks, Abby. Welcome to the Life Science Tennessee Educational Series. We're happy to host here at Epicenter. If you might not see online, our fire alarm is still sort of blinking. So if you have any issues, just let us know. But we're happy to host. Epicenter is the regional economic development hub for the West Tennessee area. I would say it's Memphis and the greater Memphis area. We host a series of events, and we're super excited to partner with Life Science Tennessee as well as Launch Tennessee on a number of activities. As Abby mentioned, I'm director of 0 to 5-10. We have something called the MDOC, which is the Medical Device Operations Challenge that's coming up in a month. That's specific for the med device companies within the area. And then we have our 0 to 5-10 accelerator starting this fall, and applications will open in June. So excited for everyone to be here, excited for this series, and now Carrie Dudek.
All right, thank you to both Abby and Olaf for that. We really appreciate Epicenter hosting us today. It's a fantastic space. We're really excited to have Bryan Barringer, who is the director of the SciFounder program under the Life Science Tennessee Foundation, presenting to us today to kind of give us some tips on the importance of customer discovery, kind of the scientific approach to it, and some strategies on how to conduct that and why it's important. So without further ado, Bryan, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. And Olaf and Abby. And let me do some housekeeping here just to get the right deck up. How's everybody doing today? That was quiet. Yeah, it was quite nice, actually, wasn't it? Okay, hang on a second. Right deck up. Okay. Let's just do a status check. Kelsey, you see it on Zoom. We see it on these screens. Great. So again, my name is Bryan Barringer. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization for Life Science Tennessee Foundation, formerly known by a couple other names, but this is our new brand and everything. We're real proud of it, Life Science Tennessee Foundation. I will get to work with life sciences organizations all the time, every day, every week, and I just thoroughly enjoy it because to me, the topic we're talking about fits square into kind of the entire reason why scientists do what they do and researchers do what they do, which is to gather data from something that is the unknown. And that's what we're talking about here is customer discovery, figuring out what is there from the unknown. So what is customer discovery? Does anybody have just a quick definition of what they think customer discovery is? Ela? Yeah. Right. So the one thing that every founder does is makes assumptions, but those are theories, right? So when we're talking about scientific and research terms, we don't say assumptions because that would be frowned upon. I'm making these assumptions about this pediatric cardiac heart valve. No, I don't want to make assumptions. I'm theorizing that this pediatric cardiac heart valve is going to work. And here's my experiments to prove or disprove that. That's the same thing customer discovery really is. In fact, I like to teach it the same way you got taught that in 7th or 8th grade chemistry class, right? The scientific method. It's really not that much different. When you have that scientific method, you're doing an observation, you're making some sort of observation about whether that's your product or whether you are trying to figure out how to change something or pivot from something. You ask questions, you do make assumptions, you build a hypothesis and theorize on that. You do experimentation, you do a conclusion, and you do results. And one other thing here that's not mentioned here is documentation, data, right? You're always validating your idea. Every layer of the idea keeps getting validated along the way. So it's very similar to the scientific method. So I bring this up, especially in the life science classes in the Cypreneur course that I teach. These are postdocs and researchers. And when I bring it in this method, they all go, oh, okay. Yeah, it's not something I have to relearn how to do. In fact, most of the language is kind of the same. One process that we do in entrepreneurship is one called design thinking, which I like to show this case as well because it's pretty similar. It starts with empathy, actually looking into a marketplace or looking into a domain and trying to figure out what problems you may want to solve. A lot of people come to this with a solution. I'm going to encourage you to look for the problem before you come with a solution. But that happens a lot of times with a solution searching for a product. But the idea here is to kind of empathize with the market, empathize with the space, and try to really put yourself into the shoes of what the customer might need from a problem perspective, properly define that, build a problem statement, a solution statement, so on and so forth. Ideate, which means to start building out your idea of what you're going to build, prototype that, and then test that. So to kind of put it in other terms, you got to learn about the audience. That's where the empathy comes in. Sharpen your key questions. So from that observation and what you're looking at the audience, kind of start formatting questions to be asked. That's what all customer discovery is asking questions. All right. So one idea there is, what do we do with those definable questions that we're asking here? We start ideating on a potential solution for that. We build a prototype and then we test. And what do we do once we test it and find our results? We take all that and go back to the original cycle and start over again until we're assured that we have pretty much vamped out every question we could possibly imagine, right? And we won't know all the questions. You'll continue to find those questions as you move along. But the idea here is to try to exhaustively ask the questions that you need. So where you're walking out of this thing with very little assumption about what you're going to do next. You know the knowns, you know the unknowns, but you may not know the unknown unknowns. And those are to be discovered later on. I'm going too fast, slow me down, but I'm trying to make up some time here. Okay, so going back to empathy, because I think this is a really important thing to kind of share and kind of discuss when you're doing this, because ultimately what we're doing in customer discovery takes you talking to other people, right? It's not doing it inside of a vacuum where you kind of validate your own things. Generally, that's you're building a solution and building your assumptions for just one customer, a customer of one, that's you, if you're doing everything inside of a vacuum. So the idea here is, how do we go out there and start talking to customers? Well, one thing is to pull out that empathy gene, which is to really dig deep and try to understand. I think the key word there is understand. Sympathy is about feeling the same way someone does. I feel sorry for you because of what you're going through. I feel for you. Empathy is about understanding all the things that go into a situation and experience, and truly being able to, in a qualitative way, understand what's going on. So when we're talking about customer discovery, when we're talking about validating a problem, that's when we really have to dig deep into the marketplace or our customers or our potential users. And in healthcare, that could be a variety of people. If you were to build an ecosystem map in healthcare, you'd have all sorts of people that you have to interact with. It's not just the inpatient that might be the customer here. In fact, they might be just the consumer of the product, but all the people upstream from them, including the physicians and healthcare providers, the administrators, the ones that hold the purse strings, the entire mission of the hospital or wherever it is. All these are factors when it comes into understanding how to get a product into a space. Well, if I don't understand customer discovery and I haven't done my due diligence of customer discovery, potentially for all those people in the ecosystem, and I'm not going to understand value propositions. I'm not going to understand where my product hits or misses. I'm not going to understand how to train people on how to use my product. I'm not going to understand who the saboteurs are, who doesn't want my product to be put in place. All this comes through customer discovery. And the idea that we're trying to push here is that in order to build something where human center is at the center, right? With the human product, the product is being used by an actual human. I mean, we build products for dogs and cats and everything else. So let's not get really keyed on the word human part there. But who buys the stuff for the dogs and cats? The human. So the idea here is where the human is in the center of the innovation here. That's the desirability, the viability, and the feasibility all wrapped up to be where innovation meets in the middle. This whole process is about innovating new products and bringing those to market. And the only way to do that is to kind of figure out what will be desirable. Is it even viable for those companies or those people to buy this or get to it? The channels, what have you? Is it too logistically impossible for them to get to it? Therefore, will be effect of your product. And is it even feasible for you to put the product together to meet the needs of what the customer wants? If you start building these three things, you see where the Venn there, that's when innovation and disruption and novel products start to come to market. This is the typical design process when we're talking about customer discovery. That first part is probably less chaotic than I've experienced, or maybe most entrepreneurs and even in this room have experienced when they're building a product from the scratch, from the ground up, just all over the place. But that's okay, because that's when it's supposed to be the most chaotic. But as you see, when you start going through some of these processes, and we're not going to dive into design thinking and all these other things, we're going to jump into customer discovery here in a minute, just best practices. But when you're starting to do that process, this is when it starts to kind of flatten out. And then you start getting delivery. And then this happens, right? Because what happens when you give a product to a customer and that customer has used that product for 6-7 months? Well, they've used every feature about that product. And it's either still providing them value every day, alleviating pains or providing gains, or it's not, and it's starting to have a diminishing return. So I can't rest on my laurels and just sit there and hope my product is working every day for as long as I choose it to live. I have to understand the customer's life cycle expectation of my product and the features there within. If it's a feature that just fixes something and makes their life better every single day, then that's great. Then it's about customer service and it's about other things in new markets. But generally, when I build a product or someone builds a product, the customer becomes used to that and they want more. So that's why this process happens every time. And it's not any easier when you go through it, but the process doesn't change. You still make your assumptions at first. You still throw a bunch of things against the wall. You still see what sticks. And then you start experimenting and educating and start talking to customers and start talking to potential people about what you need to know to make your product better. And then it kind of smooths out till the next chaotic iteration. Okay, so customer reviewing, hypothesis development. We're going to start digging into kind of the customer discovery side of things. And one thing that I start to do always is trying to format a proper problem statement. I can't explain to someone what their potential problem is if I don't have kind of all the facts and details of what I'm looking for. But notice I'm not saying I'm trying to come up with a solution statement. A lot of times you'll have the solution first. I've already said that. And the big concern there is a solution chasing a problem. If you're an entrepreneur and a founder and you're looking and you've gone through it, and unless you've had some like technology that you've been working on that you know has great application, like in your case, or some other things where you know that in Amani's case, where it's like I can I can bring efficiency in pharmacies in rural areas. I can do something there. You know, there's a problem there, but you don't know exactly what the problem is, right? But you might already know the solution. Well, I'm going to use AI and I'm going to have a dashboard and I'm going to have their economics then plugged into it and their inventory plugged into it. And I'm going to make their entire operations more efficient. So I know what I'm going to do, but I don't know how I'm going to do it or what is needed for even my MVP. What do I do first? I might have 1,000 things on my list of things I want to do, but what are the top 10 that the customer needs first or wants first, or will have them bite off on what I'm doing greater than anything else and start becoming a lifetime customer for me? So that's when I start doing the breakdown of what a problem is. So we start with the what. Determine the problem you're trying to solve. Is it an existing problem or an issue? A lot of problems exist, but you're not really trying to solve that problem. You're trying to alleviate and just get rid of the problem altogether. You're not trying to cater to the problem. So, but you need to know if a problem already exists or if it's a brand new landscape. Sometimes, like I said, it's novel and disruptive. There's nothing there. Sometimes it's hasn't changed in 65, 70 years, right? It's just never been the case. We still put adult-sized pacemakers in babies. Why is that? Because there hasn't been any innovation in pacemakers for babies. Because babies grow and you have to, the pacemaker will grow and all these different things, right? So there's a lot of things where some reasons there just doesn't have any innovation there until someone really bold comes along or technology catches up, right? Miniaturization is here today greater than it ever has been before. I mean, the age of miniaturization started off with the Walkman. Who had the Walkman, right? That was the age when Sony really started miniaturizing things. Then Intel started after that. Chips started getting smaller and smaller. Now we have sensors that are as big as this tip of this pen, right? We have different nanotechnologies that are even smaller. So what's stopping us from doing some of these things today, right? So a problem might exist for a long time. It might have had multiple solutions. Doesn't mean it's still not a problem or not have something new and disruptive. So does it exist? Is it brand new? Are there existing products in the market that are doing this? How well are they doing that? If there's a bunch of existing products and they're just measuring up to 50% of the need, but that's good enough for the customer, how long is that good enough? I guarantee you it's not long. It's not good enough forever because everybody wants a little bit more, as I've said. Start getting to the definition of the problem. What is the difference between personal and native bias and thinking objectively about your concept? I mean, that's another thing is kind of removing yourself from the problem statement creation parts of this, removing your own biases, allowing other individuals to have their biases while you actually are unbiased about your own solution. We're talking about the problem here, so we got to be unbiased about the problem as well. What are the underlying causes? And these are all things that you're starting to hear me kind of break this down. Questions should be popping in your head. I'm asking questions too, but these are questions that if you can imagine, if you present them in the right way to a customer, this is vital information you're going to get back to properly format your problem. Okay, so when does it occur? Is it at night? Is it during the day? Is it when certain things collide in an event? Is it staffing when two people, not because of their personalities, but because there's overlap or not overlap, or a gap? You'll see in this problem statement example about a gap in resources that I'll give you in a second. So where is the problem happening? Is it happening at certain locations? Is it happening with certain steps or processes occur, right? You got to break it down. Nothing is too difficult when broken up to the smallest parts. It's Henry Ford's famous saying. And I think that's a really good one. It's like just continue in this space to break down all the facts that make up what will build into a problem statement that you're going to start taking into your customer discovery sessions. Okay, remember also the problem might be something upstream or downstream. It might be a cause and effect situation, right? And you might have to move and pivot your problem statement to actually get closer to the core of where the absolute cause is. There's symptoms and there's causes. We want to get to the cause past symptoms. And the saying goes, timing is everything. So ensure timing is taken into account as well as the factors that are affecting that timing. Is it something temporary? Is it something long-term? Is it something that's always going to be cascading into a larger and larger problem? You need to understand that. Okay, where? It's real hard to avoid saying where on that last slide, but where is the other one? Like geographically, where? We have problems here in the South that the North doesn't have. We have problems in Central America that North America doesn't have. We have solutions in Europe that we would love to have here, but there's different guidelines and different things you can do, right? So, I mean, we couldn't do stem cell research here in the United States for a long time, and now we can, but it was been done in Europe for years and years and years before we started that, right? So even though you may be here in the United States of America, You could be building a problem or a solution to a problem that doesn't exist here. So you got to know where it happens geographically as well. And that will dictate a lot. When you do go and do that kind of where, that opens up an entire thing of regulations also. So like where we have FDA, there's a different process in Europe, but it's similar and same, but longer, shorter, it doesn't really matter. But the idea is like we have to deal with whatever we're doing here. So part of your problem might be to layer in what's going on in the geography that's causing the problems as well that you need to validate. Okay, and why? One of my favorite exercises is to embody my 3-year-old self, 4-year-old self, and ask why, and why, and why, and why, and why, until I've exhausted all my whys. Now, I don't go into a customer discovery session acting like a 3 or 4-year-old, but I embody 2 types of things when I go into customer discovery. That insatiable appetite for information that I had when I was 3 or 4, and every entrepreneur should have, as well as my inner therapist. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But the idea here is keep unpacking the information. You might have a very finite piece of time with each customer. So I'm not saying force the unpacking. If you have to cut bait and say, great, thank you for that 5 minutes. It was very, very high quality information you gave me. Thank you very much. Do you mind if I follow up? That's the idea here. Or ask the next person or the next persons, right? And if you can ever get to that other part that you're talking about, then maybe what you are talking about has got so much emphasis and so much pain associated with it that you don't even need to worry about that thing that's upstream in your idea, right? So focus on what's the most important and keep unpacking that for the customer. Then who is this affecting, right? So we've kind of gone the who, what, when, where, and what, but not the last one, which is how, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but who. I mean, this is simple. It's, who has experienced a problem? Is it one person? Is it when a group of people become a group of people? Or is it just when a group of people becomes a bunch of isolated peoples that it happens? So you got to understand the interactions of the human element of who is being affected by this and dig deeper to the roles of those individuals. I mentioned ecosystem mapping. Other than customer discovery, I think ecosystem mapping is probably the second most important thing you can do when you're an entrepreneur, when you're ramping up your idea for a possible solution or you're looking at a problem. And a lot of entrepreneurs these days are doing problems before solutions more than ever before, which is great to see because we used to just build things and go, I'll find a problem for it. But the idea here is like, make sure you understand the roles because you want to understand the impact of those roles. One might be causing a problem for the other. I'm not talking about, again, personnel, but it's just the activities and actions of one event causing something else that is painful for another event. And pain here doesn't mean physical pain. It could be aggravation. It could be more work. It could be a variety of things, a lack of information needed to do your job properly. All these things could affect your job. You want to know exactly where and why it's happening. And is there any kind of interpersonnel issues that are causing the problem itself? And then the how, identify, try to quantify the problem's impact. Okay, so how is this affecting all these groups of individuals? Identify possible benefits of solving the problem. Notice I didn't say show them the solution. I said show them benefits of solving the problem. So if we solve that problem for you, what would that mean to you? Oh, well, it means greater ease of doing X, Y, Z. Okay, well, thank you very much. I mean, we're talking about the benefits of solving the problem, right? Before committing to a problem or address for the possible solutions, keep digging deeper again, unpacking and continue to unpack, right? So each layer of the onion, as they say, is more and more information. So here's an example. Townsville General Hospital, the where operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As such, a patient's needs must be addressed around the clock. That seems reasonable. For the overnight shift, that's overnight, there are currently no cardiology technologists scheduled. Why? Because the staffing is below, which can create issues for emergency staff, the WHO. Some patients wait for 4 hours or more in medical laboratory assistance. I'd also argue that the patients are part of the WHO as well. This is administered an ECG test better suited for a cardiology technologist to perform and interpret. The result is in poor patient care and worse health outcomes. The hospital should always have a cardiology technologist available, even if they're only on call for overnight shifts, which is how that benefit might be brought to the table to solve this problem. So all those 5 slides I had before that are resulting in a nice, concise, well-framed problem statement. This is the starting gate for me. This is where I really like to kind of start the marathon that I'll be, or the 1,000-yard marathon, 1,000-mile marathon, the lifetime marathon that is starting a business, it seems like, of saying, if I can get down to a problem, then I know I can probably build a solution for that. Now, this might be a personnel problem, right? It might be just, let's go back to the problem that's causing a personnel problem. That might be a budget consideration, right? But it might also be that maybe some automation could take place here, right? Maybe there's new technology that can bring together. It's a self-service ECG process, right? So it doesn't have to be just at face value what the problem is. I can bring my own expertise and skills in hardware manufacturing, AI, software, and so on and so forth, and say, well, how would I solve that problem? Easily, I'd hire another cardiac technologist for a night. That could be the solution. But if they don't have the budget for that, and I'm looking at this being a problem, and I start looking at the greater landscape and realize this is a problem for 75% of rural hospitals across America, then I'm looking at a market. And maybe I do want to figure out something automated to kind of help that space. So I might not build a solution for this one hospital. It doesn't really matter. What I'm doing is trying to build a solution for a larger problem. Okay. So this is an example, but I kind of keep it in an example that seems like, oh, that's an easy fit, just hire someone. But maybe that's not possible. That's not the solution. So this is what entrepreneurs, especially in technology, kind of start with, which is a problem, and then they figure out the rest. Okay. Problem versus solution focused interviewing. Rule number one. If anybody can guess what rule number one is, you either have been in an I-Core class, or did you want to take a guess? Go ahead. No, go ahead. Right. Do not talk about your solution. My colleague, Ali Alvarez from Regional 1, and I are both I-Core instructors. And so that was one of those things. In fact, this slide, we use this slide in our other decks that we teach from, right? So, and you'll see a lot of similarities to the next 6 or 7 slides, Ali. So the idea here is, like, you do not promote your solution. You don't walk in there and say, I've got a self-service ECG, right? No, you don't say that, because you're validating the problems, and they don't know if they need that or not, or it just sounds so overwhelming. They're going to be dismissing it. They could dismiss it right out of hand. Well, God, can't even afford to hire a new cardiology technology. You think we're going to afford a $75,000 machine, right? So the idea here is, don't talk about your solution when you're talking about customer discovery. I wait and wait and wait. I will start talking to 5 people, and then I'll go talk to another 5 people. That's 10. Then I'll add another 10. I'm not going to count each time. Another 20, another 30. My rule of thumb is 100 customer discovery interviews before I even decide whether I'm going to be an entrepreneur or not in this instance, whether I'm going to go and actually do what I'm saying I'm going to do. If I get 10 people tell me I'm great about my idea, not me being great, but the idea being great, I'd also like being told I'm great. I mean, who wouldn't? But the idea here is, like, if I get 10 out of 100, I'm not touching that thing, right? 20, probably still not touching it. 30, my interest is peaked. 40, same. I'm in 60%, I'm down. I'm going for it. I'm going to jump at it, right? Because that's 60 interviews that said something that either gave me an inclination that my problem and solution set will either alleviate pains or provide gains. That's value proposition. That's definition of benefits. Alleviate pains or provide gains to a specific customer. And if I can validate that with 50+% of the people I talk to, then I know it's just like I'm onto something. So I keep going and keep going and keep going. My co-founder and I, on our last business, we had well over 1,000 customer discovery interviews before it was all said and done. We talked at conferences, every person we'd see. And in 1 weekend alone, we had 300 customer discovery interviews in Vegas. It was easy to talk to people in Vegas because they were chatty. But the idea was that we put ourselves in a place where we get as much information as we possibly can. My co-founder walked around with a sandwich board in San Francisco with a question on the front and a question on the back, just to elicit response. Are you buying a home? Are you selling a home? 40 people came up to her that day. She talked to one person for close to 45 minutes, a mother with 4 children on the Escobar, on the fish market, sorry, sitting on the sidewalk, just talking to her, and she was trying to sell her home. So this is a real estate product that she and I were trying to build. And out of the 10, 12 people that gave her the time of day, more than 2 minutes, other than answering a question, yes or no, she got some really great stuff that we took into our next meeting with the real estate agency that afternoon. I pivoted the product in about a heartbeat based on some information that we were told. right? So the idea is like, don't talk about your solution, just talk about it. All she was asking for was, what experience are you going through right now selling your home? That's it. The co-founder is my wife now, so I wasn't stupid. Okay, finding interviewees. Your network is a great place to start. In fact, friends and family are a great place to start. I mean, you can cut your teeth in customer discovery with anybody. I mean, I always started with my dad. I always got the worst feedback from my dad, which was, that's great. Yes, you're awesome. That's awesome. You should go do that right now. Always got that feedback from my dad, but that's from my dad. Okay, it's okay. My mom hated every idea I've ever done, right? Which I actually got more out of my mom sometimes than my dad. But guess what? I just started locally. Now, I don't still do that. But when I was younger, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So, I mean, I've been doing this my whole life. When I was younger, I started off with my family. Now I have a Rolodex. I have a network. I can call a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends. If it's in life science, I have 4 people in this room right now that I call and have called. Called Olaf last week, about 2 weeks about an idea, right? So I just start with who I know. So your network, LinkedIn, reach out. Use LinkedIn as your research tool to find people that are in your space and people that you could potentially talk to, and DM them, you know, just slide in there and say, hey, I'm doing research. Don't say I'm a CEO. That will come up a little bit later. Referrals and interviews will come up in a second too, but, you know, ask for people to, you know, who else should I talk to? Trade shows and meetups. That's what I was talking about earlier. Trade show in Las Vegas for Keller Williams. It was a real estate product. I know I'm bringing up a non-life science thing, but it's an easy one to do. We had thousands of people there. It was target rich environment. So put yourself in those target rich environments. Save the ultimate decision makers for another day though, especially in the early stages, because you're going to get a pretty biased opinion of what the problem is. And you're probably going to get the door closed on you very, very quickly because they know all the things, or at least they think they know all the things. They certainly know the budget generally. And that $25,000 or $35,000 cardiology technologist or a $75,000 machine, they're going to know that real quick. I can hire 2 of those. I'm not even going to hire 2 of those for this one machine. So no, thank you for your time. I like to say those last because as I'm building my customer discovery, I'm also building that eco map that we talked about. I'm trying to find the antagonists, the saboteurs, the protagonists, the heroines, the oracle, the sage, the guy with the green robe behind the green curtain in the Emerald City. That kind of, hopefully not a liar like he was, but if you've watched Wicked, you know. But anyway, the idea is that you want to find the sage, the oracle, the one who is well experienced too, but no, that might be also the saboteur. Now, why do I want to find out who the saboteur is? Because I want to, that person, he or she may be the most important person for me to deliver and derive value propositions for, so I can convince them to join my team as an advocate and champion to then go talk to the other people that are less going to stand in my way. I used to invite lawyers to my meetings at the very beginning of every project or business I did, so they couldn't tell me no later because they were too involved along the way. So your usual suspects, all of them need to do that, but the decision makers and some of the fringe of that side of the things, save those for last. So you're validating, because you're bringing more information to them sometimes than you are asking them for more information. Okay, guidelines for outreach. Introduce yourself when you're doing this and do a little bit of like, hey, this is who I am, right? Leverage your network. Hey, James asked me to give you a call, or James said, yeah, I got your number from James, right? Or Allie, or whomever it is. Utilize that. Utilize and ask for warm intros. Try to leverage your network as much as you can to get into these conversations with people. Do not introduce yourself as a CEO. I try not to introduce myself as an entrepreneur or founder either. I like to say I'm doing research. It's a small. No, it's not even a white lie. It's true. I'm doing research, but I'm not doing it for a research facility or a research organization. I'm not doing it for class. I have said I'm doing it for class before. I'm just trying to get information. I'm not really trying to bamboozle this person into give me information that I shouldn't have. But I also don't want to set this conversation off by saying I'm a CEO, I'm a founder, I've got this solution. I'm a person doing research. So embody that position. Just don't introduce yourself as a CEO. Generally, when you're a startup and you're a CEO and they know you're a startup, they're like, you're an employee of one, and they might not give you the time of day either. If you're saying I'm doing research, a lot of times they want to feed into that. Just ask for a small bit of time. ask for, I like 5 minutes. Hey, can I just get 5 minutes of your time? Just a quick phone call. I promise I'll keep you only to 5 minutes. And I'm very, very, very clear on that intent too. And if 5 minutes come up and I'm the one still talking, I say, thank you very much for your time. If there's 5 minutes come up and they're the ones talking, I'm going to let that person go for as long as they'll talk to me. And I would just ask, well, why is that? Simple questions just to keep them talking and keep them iterating on their own ideas. But don't walk in there expecting an hour. Hey, I need an hour of your time. No, I need a very small, brief period every time. And then be respectful of that. Video chat or in person is the best. I mean, this or this, depending on how old you are, I'm still this, by the way. If this is what you're utilizing, that's okay. That's your backup. Because what am I not doing? I'm not being able to read body language. I'm not reading inflection. I'm not aggravation, frustration, distraction. These are all things that I'm picking up if I'm seeing someone's face and seeing someone's body move, fidget, or otherwise. Or I'm also not seeing them kind of sit back and go and lean into a question too. Well, I'm glad you asked, right? Because then you know that's interest. And now you can start picking apart that. Referencing expertise or something you saw or heard from them, right? I love doing this too. I saw in an article 2 weeks ago about your company that y'all are getting into this. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Right? Immediately, I've opened the person up because now I've talked to them about something that they're definitely interested in. Right? So if you can do your research, know your audience, then act like the inner 3-year-old therapist and elicit information, you're going to get tons of information back. Great gold and nuggets of gold. And flattery will give you everywhere. Don't be a sycophant. Don't just blow kisses and well wishes their way, but be respectful, thank them, give them accolades where they are deserved, and just be appreciative of their time. No selling. Last thing on this bullet list, no selling. I don't care if they say, when is it available? Say, I'm working on that. I'll get back to you. And then keep doing customer discovery. Don't stop just because you got one customer. That's a great sign, but it might be the only customer you get. If I talk to 100 people and I only got one customer, I'm not building that product unless that person wants to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars for me to build a one-off for them. Happily do that. But the idea is, like, if I have 20 out of 40 or 20 out of 50 people saying they'd buy it, I'm off to the races. But I'm not thinking about pricing right now, so I don't want to answer that question. I'm not thinking about logistics and how they get to it. I'm not thinking of lifetime of my product and how long they'll have it. Planned obsolescence might be a part of my plan, where I want them to exchange it on a subscription every 4 months. I'm not going to load any of that because I don't know any of that yet, because I haven't done customer discovery on that yet. I'm still at the problem solution side of things. So no selling. One thing I'll say before I move on to this, though, if you do this right and you leave with good taste in their mouths from your interview process, and they were interested and they have expressed interest of being a customer, you will go back to them and utilize them as now champions, because they're part of that. And we're not going to go through the chasm and early adoption and everything else, but they're probably that early adopter group. The ones that are like, okay, well, I'll take the product. Maybe even if it's a little less than refined around the edges, but I will need that product so badly, I'm willing to kind of take it in that state. So now you might have a beta user. You might have someone that you can do in a prototype. You might have someone you can bring in as a focus group. Those people, now that you've kind of got that connection, you've built that camaraderie with them and gotten that informational relationship with them, they can be great champions for you later on. This is a good example of a email. I'm just going to summarize here. It's basically just saying, hey, I'm asking for your time to talk about this in your field of study. Can you please give me 15 minutes? It won't be very difficult. Here are some available times and dates. Really just laying it out there so they can come back and say, yeah, I'm available on April 26th, right? Or a quick phone call, discuss how you're going to do this, so on and so forth. So emails are really good. Emails coming from other people. Hey, I was talking to Bryan the other day. He wants to find out more information about a problem. Jeff, you're my friend. Do you mind talking to Bryan for 5 minutes? He won't take more than 5 minutes. He only took 5 minutes of my time, right? So warm introductions are even better. Okay, customer discovery interview method. Am I good on time? 4:20. Okay. The Socratic method, I promise, is the only other time I'm kind of going into the science stuff here and everything else, but I like to talk about the Socratic method because it's a very good way of talking about how to ask questions. Socrates never wrote anything down, right? He had colleagues that would write his stuff down, but he just asked questions and listened, right? I'm not saying he never wrote things down, but he was known for not really writing things down because he was the interviewer in these situations. Came with the Socratic method, which is used to clarify concepts, right? So he's bringing something to the table because he wants clarification. He wants more in-depth information. He wants to probe and challenge the assumptions that are either made by himself or his colleagues, yourself, or what have you. Rationale, reasoning, evidence. You're looking for information, right? You're not providing, you're gathering. This is this is not hunting where I'm going out and finding anything. This is farming where I'm kind of harvesting information back into me. Questions, viewpoints, and perspectives, probes, implications, causes, and consequences, questions and questions. Does everybody remember the three-word question that I said earlier, three-letter question? Why? I mean, this is exactly what he and the Socratic method really implies, which is just keep asking the question. Don't be incessant to the point where they kick you out of their house, but respectfully keep digging until there's not anything left to dig. But everything needs to be elicited. Everything needs to be open-ended. Not, I'm talking about my solution and I'm asking you, do you like pink, blue? Okay, you can do that in focus groups. What you're asking for here is, do you want this button? Or more so is like, if there was a magic button, what would you want the magic button to do? Why would you want it to do that? What is the cause or the reason why you need it to do that? Right? So on and so forth, keeping asking why. So the Socratic method is really important to understand only in its aspect that it really elicits information because it's open-ended kind of question. It's always unpacking. It's always digging in, digging deeper, peeling the onion, whatever analogy you want to use. All right, start off with a warm-up. How long have you been in this position? What are your responsibilities? Can you tell me about a typical day? I like to start off with that last one more than anything else when I'm talking about like specific people and job functions that I know are affected by what I'm talking about the problem. Can you just describe your typical day? Right? It just kind of opens it up, right? Then you can also dig into certain aspects of that. Identify the biggest needs your customer has. That's your number one goal, is to start big and get smaller. What are the biggest problems? What are the biggest pain points? What's the biggest areas of gain that you want? Where do you want your benefit to be? Okay, question number two, or question number, what are the top two challenges that keep you up at night? I mean, this is a good question too. Okay, you're asking about their job, you're asking about their challenges, and you're asking them about a stress level that they think about outside of their job. But I didn't ask a very specific question. This is a very open question that kind of asks them to tell me about the two challenges at work that keep them up at night, literally or figuratively. Identify the frequency and urgency. If it's a one-time thing and they go, oh, it happens every so often, it's not that big of a deal. Hey, it could be a big deal. You need to talk to about 40 more people to see if it is. Or they're lying. It's their responsibility. I've had that happen too, but you want to find out how much and how often it's happened, right? And what the impact is. All right, so question two would be, can you tell me about the last time that happened? Why was that hard or challenging, right? So my goal is to try to find out the things that keep them up at night. My questioning is asking them, can you tell me the last time this happened and what and why is it so hard and challenging for you? Again, very open-ended questions. Identify the current solutions that they have. What do you do to solve this? What did you like or dislike about that solution? Remember, they probably have a solution in place. I have a solution in my mind, but I'm really asking about the problem. But part of the problem might be the solution that they already have. Right. So as we're going through these questions, remember, we'll have a goal for the question, and the question itself is open-ended, listening, or open-ended response. Question four, when was the last time hardware, software, whatever you're doing was adopted? And so how often can new things come into your environment? It's another good question as well. You have a very strenuous process where nothing new can be introduced because it's ISO 9000 or ISO 14001. It's something that's very, very detailed from a standards organization perspective. You can't change it. Right. So the idea is like, how often is new things, new processes, new products adopted? What's the process for adoption of that product? If I have enough time, I should be able to get to maybe even the department or a person's name. And then I can ask, hey, do you mind making an introduction to Department Manager X? Because that seems to be where maybe the problem lies. Of course, you can see where all that would get hairy too, because you don't want one person in the audience or in the company pointing to another person. So you might have to discern what I just said and make your own route to that other department without putting this person in the rears on that one. But the idea is like, if you start figuring out, hey, where's the stream, upstream and downstream, where's the causation? I need to follow that path, like, you know, like a bloodhound. I couldn't think of the dog. Okay. So when's the last time? All right. And final question, who else can I speak with? I mean, always leave it at the best open-ended question at the very end is like, who else can I talk to? Who else do you think might be able to help me? Who else is experiencing the same problems you are? Even if it's exactly the same, I want to hear it because it's validation. And that's it. I mean, that's my presentation. That's the whole thing. So what I've done is kind of laid out for you the idea of customer discovery being very similar to research. The end result of research is data, validated. The end result of that process is proving or disproving your theories and your hypotheses. And the only way to do that is experiments, in this case, interviewing, right? I'm documenting everything I'm finding. I'm improving my product as I go along. Maybe I'm updating a business model canvas. Maybe I'm updating a prototype. Be a variety of different things that I'm doing. But I'm taking each bit of that information and I'm making my product better. Remember, if I'm talking 100 people and 60 of them say they like the idea, I want to try to figure out what the MVP, the minimum viable product or prototype is for that 60 people too. I can only do that through customer discovery interviews. And that is a long set of customer discovery interviews. I'm not going to find out what my MVP is in the first set of customer discovery interviews. I'll probably find those after I've talked to some of those people 2 or 3 times. All right. So keep going back to the well. Find the people that you know might be experiencing the problem. Ask them in a Socratic fashion, a way to elicit information. Rinse and repeat. Just keep going over and over again until you feel like you have safe assumptions still left on the table that, hey, those assumptions are going to be validated by just deployment or something else. I mean, I can assume my logistics, I can assume my channels and stuff like that as I'm building on my prototype. I can figure those out later, but I don't have any assumptions that are blaring related to my solution as it is to fitting a need for a problem. And that's my goal. Okay, so I'll open it up here. We have 3 minutes left, but we can take a little bit more time because we have the still blinking lights. Any questions from the audience? Kelsey, it looks like there's one on the chat. Maybe I can pull it up. Yeah. Never. When are you done with customer discovery? When you've sold your business, when you've exited. But then that starts on the next product or the next solution. I mean, I'm not being, you know, jokingly saying that. I mean, I think customer discovery is something you continue to do. It might be just done through surveys. It might be done through focus groups. It might be done through a variety of other techniques, but you're still asking for people's opinions about your products. Customer satisfaction metrics are a big way of getting customer discovery done as well, how your product's performing in the market. There's other pieces of software that measure performance and so on and so forth. To me, this is all information I need to better my product in the marketplace. Yep. I never. Let me repeat the question. When do you pay for interviews versus pro bono? I don't pay for interviews. I don't recommend anybody paying for interviews. If someone's asking you for their time, money for their time, you're going to get maybe good information, but also probably very biased information about whatever they're focused on. I mean, if it's someone who literally you figure has the answer to all your problems and they're saying you have to pay me $100 or $200 an hour to talk to me, I probably would still turn them down and say, no, thanks. I'll go find it somewhere else. So I don't recommend it. I've never, I mean, I'm again, 3rd generation, been doing tech for 40 years, never paid for a customer discovery interview. I wouldn't mind getting paid to be interviewed. Sounds very novel and nice, but I've never seen that or done that. Any other questions? Oh, all the time. I mean, and you're talking about in the interview, right? Are you talking about interview to interview? Yeah, yes, yes, and yes. My 2 examples and yours. So, I mean, like in the interview process, I'll pivot my questions all the time. Maybe it's another question I had on my list that seems more reasonable to ask this person as opposed to the last person. And of course, I'm always thinking of questions to ask all the rest of the people as well. As I'm following up with those individuals, obviously I'll have different questions or maybe different variations of the same questions to validate. And then as my solution evolves, I have different things to ask. Right. So yeah, it kind of iterates on itself over and over again. So, yeah.
What tools do you use? Like your
It's a good question. What tools? Airtable is a great tool. Just Google Docs is also a great tool, or any, if you're on 365, just whatever your method is of tracking information. Now, if you're sharing information, I definitely recommend something like an Airtable or a Miro or product boards, vision boards, Monday.com, all these different things. You can hook them all into Slack. You can have conversations around them. Fortunately for us now, wasn't the case 20 years ago. There's actually, this is the problem. There's almost too many tools out there, and most of them integrate, or you can use Zapier or something else to integrate those solutions. But you got to pick what's comfortable to you that you're going to be able to utilize, and understand that if you're sharing that information, it has to be in a format that can be shared easily. So I do a lot of Airtable stuff. I use a lot of Google Table stuff. I've used a lot of product development when I'm doing actual product development. I capture the customer discovery information in the product development kind of space, which would be Confluence or Asana or something like that too. So there's a variety of tools that can be used out there. What I haven't jumped into, although I've used one tool for this one part, Vanderbilt's been testing a tool that actually helps you create customer discovery questions. But I guarantee you ChatGPT does the same thing, and every AI can do the same thing. It's just the LLM, right? So I love ChatGPT. I'm very biased towards that platform. I go in there and all the time and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to find information about. Can you, I mean, I can do it myself too, but it's so much easier to type in a paragraph of information, have them spit, I said, and give me 10 customer discovery questions to start off with. Bam, off the printer, and here we go. Right? That was figuratively off the printer, but the idea is you take the questions and you go do that. So AI is a fantastic tool. What I haven't done a lot of, because I'm in teaching mode, not entrepreneurship mode, is actually fed that back into ChatGPT and my LLM and saying, hey, now here's my problem, and feeding my solution into it, feeding customer discovery information, transcribed from my Zoom meetings, allowing all that to kind of coalesce inside the same module, and then saying, okay, now give me the MVP. And then I'll go take that and do what? I'll validate through customer discovery again, because I'm not going to just take what Sam Altman and ChatGPT tell me, although sometimes I do just take whatever it tells me. But the idea is like, figure out what could be there, get that information, utilize the tools that help you do that these days, and make it easier on yourself. Allie? The question is, should you have a different hypothesis for the different roles? I think you can. The answer for that for me is you definitely can, and generally probably would, because you're really trying to decipher from someone or a set of people that have different mentalities or different job positions, different responsibilities, different accountabilities, different motivations, so on and so forth. So yeah, I should probably, and this goes back, thank you for this, because we said this earlier, but I didn't get enough time to really think, is like, know your audience, right? I don't go into a meeting, I'm pretty much with anybody, without first looking at LinkedIn and then looking at something deeper, their posts or research papers or documentation that I can find, or collaborations or anything else. I'm always looking for a leg up on someone, not stalking them for those reasons arbitrarily. I'm literally gathering information so I can make my customer discovery session with them the most efficient it can be for them. I learned a long time ago that if I walk out of a customer discovery interview and they're as happy as I am, then I can ask that person anything I want for as long as I want. I can come back and send an email saying, hey, quick question. What do you think? I'll get a paragraph back, texting them. Hey, sorry to bother you. Just had a quick question. But that's after I've gotten to know the person, but that's after I also built kind of a profile of who that person was before I even met that person. So know your audience. Okay. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I don't really know who my end users are. So it's easy to say, yeah, I'm talking to everybody. I continue to talk to representation of all the groups as I progress through. So I'm still checking in with a variety of individuals. Maybe it's the CEO, or maybe it's the purchasing agent, or someone that's doing that. But I'm trying to figure out everyone in the space, and you know, and some my colleagues might call it overkill. And I don't think there is an overkill in customer discovery. I think you can continue to do it for too long and get analysis paralysis, failure to launch, that kind of thing. But that's mostly fear. It's not because you have all the information you have. You have all the information you have. But the idea is like, you know, going back to the same thing, it's like I might not approach two people in the same organization the same way. I might not approach the same person in the same frequency as well. I might go one and done with someone because I got a great bit of information, but it was really like pulling teeth, but they were great. And then I'm not going to go back to them again, not because it was difficult, just because it was like my law of diminishing returns. How much more am I going to get out of them? But I might talk to someone else that's related to that department 200 times before it's all, not literally, but certainly 2 or 3 more times before it's all said and done. Any other questions? Okay, this QR code, although I think I know everybody in here, but all those online as well. There's a QR code on the screen right now. Snap it real quick. That's just my LinkedIn. Just reach out to me if you haven't already done that. We can exchange contact information. It's my version of a business card. If you have anything you'd like to talk about, follow on this information, talk about other topics that we can talk about, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Okay. Thank you. It's all yours.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it. That was very, very insightful. I think a lot of us that have been in the space know and have lived through it, know how important customer discovery is. And I don't think you can understate its importance, honestly, or overstate, excuse me. Anyways, thank you guys for joining and being patient with us as we kind of had a short delay there on the front end. For those that are in person, we're going to be going down to Wiseacre for a little beer and biotech networking event. For those that are online, thank you for joining us today. Please join us next month. We're going to be moving over to Knoxville and focusing on different aspects of compliance as a life science startup. And that'll be on April 8th of next month. Keep an eye out for more information to come about that. Otherwise, we thank you all for joining us today, and we'll wrap up there. I don't know if we should just hit it.